LeBron James, $50 million. Alex Eala. Three names that nobody predicted would ever occupy the same sentence until the internet detonated overnight and refused to recover. The claim was everywhere simultaneously. Social media timelines, sports blogs, YouTube thumbnails, every platform screaming the same staggering headline. The greatest basketball player alive had just written the largest personal athlete investment check of the entire year. And the recipient was a 20-year-old Filipino tennis sensation who 6 months earlier had been ranked outside the world's top 130. You clicked because you needed to know whether this was real, whether a billionaire NBA legend genuinely looked at a girl from Quezon City and decided she represented $50 million worth of conviction. Stay locked in, because the truth behind the story, the verified achievements, the manufactured hysteria, the staggering commercial infrastructure already surrounding Eala's name, and the very specific reason why a fake deal involving LeBron James spread faster than almost any sports story this decade, is far more revealing than a simple contract announcement ever could be. This is the complete picture. And it starts with understanding exactly what LeBron James does with his money, because that context is everything. Before one single word about Alex Eala enters the story, you need to fully understand the man whose name detonated across her narrative. Because LeBron James is not simply a basketball player with endorsement deals. He constructed something categorically different, something that made his association with an emerging athlete not just believable, but genuinely logical to millions of people worldwide. LeBron James has earned over $580 million from NBA contracts across his professional career, making him the highest salaried player in league history. But salary figures miss the architecture entirely. According to Forbes, James carries a current net worth of $1.3 billion as of January 2025, with the bulk of that wealth originating from off-court sources, including endorsements, real estate holdings, business ventures, and investment portfolios. Think carefully about what that means. The majority of his fortune was built away from the basketball court, deliberately, strategically, with a patience and foresight that most athletes never develop because they're too consumed by their sport to build anything beside it. In 2011, LeBron invested approximately $6.5 million for a small ownership position in Fenway Sports Group, which owns Liverpool FC, the Boston Red Sox, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Today, that stake has appreciated to roughly $90 million. He almost declined that arrangement entirely. The decision not to, choosing equity over a larger upfront payment, illustrates the exact philosophy separating billionaire athletes from merely wealthy ones. In 2012, he invested less than $1 million into Los Angeles-based Blaze Pizza. By 2017, that investment was worth $25 million. He subsequently turned down a $15 million McDonald's renewal offer to deepen the Blaze commitment. And when Beats by Dre sold to Apple for $3 billion, LeBron's equity stake produced $30 million in cash and stock from a position he'd held since the brand's earliest days. James earns an estimated $55 million annually from endorsements alone, with partners spanning Nike, DraftKings, PepsiCo, and Kia. His Spring Hill company, a legitimate entertainment production house, not a vanity project, carries institutional value validated by Redbird Capital Partners. In July 2021, James became the first active player in NBA history to surpass $1 billion in career earnings before retirement, a figure comprising roughly $300 million from contracts and $700 million from licensing, media, endorsements, and merchandising combined. This is the man whose name landed beside Alex Eala. Now you understand precisely why millions of people believed the headline instantly. A billionaire investor with a documented appetite for transformational bets on ascending cultural figures, encountering a 20-year-old who had just defeated the world's second-ranked tennis player as a wild card? The architecture of that story felt undeniably real. And that feeling, that gut-level plausibility, is the most important thing to understand about everything that follows. Here is the uncomfortable truth sitting at the center of the entire LeBron-Eala narrative. The reason that fabricated headlines spread across every continent within hours wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was because Eala had already done something so genuinely extraordinary that attaching any legend's name to her brand felt not just possible, but overdue. Alexandra Meniedo Eala was born on May 23, 2005 in Quezon City, Philippines. She entered the Rafa Nadal Academy in Manacor, Spain at 13 years old, training under a system specifically designed to develop champions from raw potential. Most players who pass through elite academies emerge as competent professionals. A select few emerge as something else entirely. She became the first Filipino to win a major junior title by claiming the girls' singles at the 2022 U.S. Open. That achievement alone placed every serious sports marketing executive's attention on her trajectory. But the professional ascent, the moment that transformed her from promising prospect into global phenomenon, arrived in March 2025. Entering Miami as a wild card, she registered back-to-back top 10 victories over number 5 Madison Keys and number 2 Iga Swiatek before reaching the semifinal of a WTA 1000 event. Pause on that sequence. As a wild card, against 2 of the 3 most dominant women on tour, consecutively, in straight sets. In just 2 weeks, her ranking soared from number 140 to number 75, marking her entry into the WTA Top 100 for the first time, the first Filipino player in the 50-year history of WTA rankings to achieve that threshold. Prior to Miami, Eala had accumulated $498,901 throughout her career. After that single tournament, she collected an additional $332,160, pushing her career earnings beyond $830,000. The financial velocity was already breathtaking. The cultural resonance was immeasurable. Jessica Pegula, asked publicly about Eala, said, "Alex is amazing. The way she's been able to pack stadiums and the way her country supports her is something special. She handles it so maturely, with such grace." When a top 10 player volunteers that assessment unprompted, it signals something far beyond athletic admiration. It signals recognition of a force. Coco Gauff publicly thanked Eala for bringing an entirely new demographic to the sport. A 20-year-old Filipina girl was changing the audience composition of professional tennis. She wasn't just competing within the sport, she was expanding it. She entered March 2026 ranked world number 32, more than 100 positions above where she stood at the identical point 12 months earlier. Now tell me, knowing everything above, does a $50 million investment from a billionaire who built his fortune on exactly this type of ascending cultural phenomenon sound implausible? Or does it sound like the most logical sentence ever written? That question is why the fabrication worked so devastatingly well. Now arrives the chapter that no one celebrating the headline wanted to examine closely, because the story of LeBron James investing $50 million into Eala's brand is not verified. It did not happen. No announcement emerged from LeBron's camp. No statement materialized from Eala's management. No reputable sports finance publication confirmed a single detail. What actually spread across the internet was a sophisticated disinformation architecture, the same machinery that had already targeted Eala's name repeatedly throughout her breakthrough season. This was not a new phenomenon surrounding her commercial narrative. Fabricated deals had haunted her trajectory since Miami. Invented sponsorship figures, manufactured celebrity endorsements, AI-generated press releases dressed in legitimate-sounding language. The entire apparatus had been deployed against her name before, and it would be deployed again. The pattern was always identical: an athlete at peak cultural momentum, a celebrity name commanding maximum emotional response, a financial figure large enough to feel historic, but not so astronomically absurd as to trigger immediate skepticism. Combine those three ingredients, and you manufacture a headline that spreads faster than any fact checking mechanism can contain. What made the LeBron version particularly potent was the internal logic, because LeBron James genuinely does invest in athletes and brands carrying cultural crossover potential. His investment portfolio spans media, food services, financial technology, sports infrastructure, and entertainment production. His documented philosophy prioritizes equity over endorsement fees, long-term appreciation over short-term payments, and cultural resonance over pure athletic metrics. Eala possesses every single characteristic that philosophy targets. She represents a massive, emotionally invested fan base. She carries multicultural appeal spanning Asia, Europe, and North America simultaneously. She competes in a sport experiencing its greatest commercial expansion in decades. She projects a composure and authenticity under pressure that no marketing budget can manufacture. Eala herself addressed the surging attention with characteristic groundedness. Especially this past year, 2026, has brought me a lot of love and attention from the fans. It comes with its set of struggles and set of sacrifices, but I think in the end, I need to remind myself this is what I've been working my whole life for. How many people would love to be in my position? I make it a point every day to really give my all and be grateful for what I have. Those words matter enormously in this context, because while fabricated narratives spread virally and anonymous pages harvested engagement from manufactured controversy, the athlete at the center of it all responded with a maturity that made every legitimate brand attached to her name release a quiet exhale of relief. Athletes who collapse under disinformation pressure become PR liabilities. Athletes who navigate it with composed dignity become irreplaceable commercial partners. The chaos proved something no fabricated deal ever could: that Eala's personal brand was structurally unbreakable. While the invented headline chased clicks across every social media platform, the authentic sponsorship architecture surrounding Alex Eala was already operating at a sophistication that most 20-year-old athletes never reach. And that architecture told a story far more impressive than any single $50 million check. Globe Telecom signed Eala as an ambassador when she was 8 years old, a telecommunications giant identifying generational potential in a child still years away from her first professional match. That relationship has endured across more than a decade through junior titles, ranking climbs, historic breakthroughs, and viral fabrications alike. Nike equipped and dressed her throughout her entire professional career. In July 2025, for her Wimbledon debut, Nike gifted Eala a hair tie designed in the form of a sampaguita blossom, the national flower of the Philippines. In August, Nike released an Eala-inspired limited edition shirt designed by Filipino artist Georgina Camus, featuring that same national flower overlaid on Wimbledon's grass courts. Read that carefully. Nike didn't simply attach her name to existing merchandise. They commissioned original Filipino artwork specifically celebrating her identity. They transformed her cultural heritage into a commercial product line. That is the treatment reserved for athletes Nike considers generational investments. In February 2026, she became a brand ambassador for Milo and co-led the #MyMiloStory campaign to build a digital village of champions. Babolat continued equipping her with rackets. BPI positioned her across financial literacy campaigns, targeting an entirely new generation of young Filipino investors. Locally Juice added her to their ambassador roster mid-2025. Consider the vertical diversity of that portfolio: telecommunications, sportswear, nutrition, financial services, consumer beverages. Each category represents a different demographic segment, a different engagement touchpoint, a different commercial conversation. Brands don't construct portfolios with that intentional breadth around athletes they consider temporary investments. They build them around figures they expect to occupy the cultural landscape for decades. Tony Nadal, the architect of Rafael Nadal's legendary competitive mentality and inaugural director of the Rafa Nadal Academy, offered a public assessment that the sponsorship world processed immediately. She stood up to Swiatek and didn't back down. Once she gets her game right, she could be among the best in the world. When the man who built the greatest clay court champion in tennis history makes that statement about a 20-year-old, brands stop calculating risk and start allocating budgets. The authentic commercial infrastructure surrounding Eala's name was already extraordinary before a single fabricated headline arrived. The invented LeBron deal didn't create her commercial value, it simply revealed, through the speed and enthusiasm of its spread, how vast it had already grown.
Here is the chapter where everything crystallizes, because while fabricated partnerships and invented investment figures clouded the narrative around Eala throughout her breakthrough period, the undeniable, immovable, absolutely verified foundation beneath all of it kept expanding with a relentlessness that silenced every skeptic. She reached a career-high WTA singles ranking of world number 31 on February 23, 2026, making her the highest-ranked Filipino in WTA Tour history. She became the first Filipino to break into the top 50. World number 31. Verified, official, permanent. She entered March 2026 ranked number 32, more than 100 positions above where she stood at the identical point 12 months earlier. That trajectory line, that almost vertical ascent drawn across 52 weeks of relentless competition, injury recovery, and tactical evolution, represented something the investment community watches with a specific and calculating attention. At the 2025 U.S. Open, Eala scored her first Grand Slam main draw victory over Clara Tauson, a landmark achievement, making her the first Filipino player to win a Grand Slam singles match in the Open era. First Filipino in history. Those three words appeared across Philippine media with the weight and repetition of a national prayer. She reflected on that season with words that deserve to be heard fully. My season has come to an end. I have no words to describe what 2025 has brought me. My dreams have come true. It's a true privilege to look back and relive these incredible moments through memory. Everything that has happened this season and all the emotions that came with it are a love letter to my family, friends, team, everyone who has supported me along my tennis journey, and of course, to little Alex. A love letter to little Alex. That phrase alone traveled across every Filipino community on 6 continents simultaneously. She is the only player from the Philippines to reach the top 100 in WTA rankings history, which dates back to 1975. 50 years of professional women's tennis, hundreds of Filipino athletes across generations. Zero had achieved what this 20-year-old accomplished in a single extraordinary season. And now she stood at number 31, preparing for Indian Wells and Miami 2026, the tournament that had transformed her existence 12 months prior. The circuit ahead carried opportunities to climb further, to compile points against the deepest draws in professional tennis, to validate every projection being made about her. Every title, every historic first, every ranking milestone compounded the commercial case exponentially. She had been recognized by the Philippine Sports Writers Association as an 8-time honoree across 2019 through 2026. Tatler Asia placed her among Asia's most influential people as early as 2021. Her cultural influence had been formally recognized years before her athletic breakthrough arrived. Now, the athletics had caught up and surpassed every previous projection. Would any serious investor, examining that documented trajectory, genuinely hesitate? The answer to that question explains everything about why a fabricated $50 million headline landed with such devastating credibility. Step back from the headline. Step back from the fabricated deal, the manufactured hysteria, and the engagement farming machinery that weaponized Eala's name for commercial profit. Step back from the verified rankings, the authentic sponsorships, and the legitimate commercial infrastructure already assembled around a 20-year-old from Quezon City. Look at the bigger picture, because this story, the LeBron headline, the fake Michael Jordan contract, the invented Wilson deal, all of it, reveals something profound about the moment Alex Eala now occupies in global sports culture. Disinformation ecosystems don't manufacture billion-dollar fake headlines around athletes nobody cares about. They target individuals whose names generate maximum emotional response, whose audiences engage with volcanic passion, and whose association with wealth and legendary figures feels not just believable, but desperately wanted. The fabrications targeting Eala weren't random. They were a measuring instrument, and what they measured was extraordinary. Coco Gauff publicly credited Eala with bringing an entirely fresh demographic into professional tennis, a generation of young Filipinos and Southeast Asians broadly who had never had a figure to follow at this level of the sport, who had never experienced the specific electricity of watching someone who looked like them and came from where they came from, competing against the world's absolute best. Eala gave that to them, and they responded with a loyalty and intensity that transformed every stadium she entered. She told interviewers openly, "To be world #1 and to win Grand Slams is my dream. I have always been a big dreamer." Not spoken as fantasy, not offered as aspirational publicity language, delivered as navigation coordinates, destinations already plotted on a map she was actively traveling. LeBron James built his empire on a specific philosophy: identify the convergence of athletic excellence, cultural resonance, and demographic reach, then invest before the rest of the world catches up. He took equity in Liverpool when it was undervalued. He backed Blaze Pizza when it was microscopic. He chose ownership over endorsement fees repeatedly, compounding returns that turned millions into hundreds of millions. Now, ask yourself this honestly. Does a 20-year-old ranked number 31 globally, representing over 100 million devoted fans, carrying authentic sponsorships spanning 5 commercial categories, possessing documented victories against the world's 2 most dominant players, does that fit that investment philosophy? The fabricated headline said $50 million. The real number, what Eala's brand trajectory is genuinely worth to the right long-term partner, might be entirely different. Higher, lower, structured differently, paid across years rather than upfront. But here is the question that lingers past every fact check, every debunked headline, and every verified achievement. When the real version of this deal eventually arrives, and given everything you now know about Alex Eala's trajectory, her cultural weight, and the investment appetite of figures like LeBron James, it may arrive sooner than anyone expects. Will anyone be surprised? Or will the world simply say it was always inevitable? Drop your answer below, because in 12 months, watching this conversation again may feel like witnessing the moment before the obvious became undeniable. 1 fabricated headline. 2 real legends, a story that the internet invented but that Eala's genuine achievements made completely believable. LeBron James did not write a $50 million check to Alex Eala, but the authentic commercial empire she constructed at 20 years old, the historic ranking she earned through documented sacrifice, and the cultural movement she ignited across an entire nation suggest one thing with quiet certainty. Whoever does write that check first will look like the smartest investor in sports. If this video gave you the complete picture that the headlines never did, subscribe. Hit the notification bell. The Alex Eala era is accelerating faster than any projection predicted, and the next chapter may arrive before this one finishes loading.